Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're just going through the motions, a background character in your own life? That's exactly how 53-year-old Margaret felt. Her days were a predictable loop. Wake up, work, cook, sleep. The vibrant, confident woman she once was seemed like a distant memory, replaced by someone who felt beige. Life had lost its color. Then Tyler moved in next door. At 18 he was everything Margaret wasn't. Full of life, always laughing with friends, music drifting from his window. He was a burst of technicolor in her monochrome world. At first, she just noticed him the way you notice a sunny day after a week of rain. It was Pelite always offering a cheerful hello, Mrs. Gable. When he saw her gardening, he helped her carry in heavy groceries once, his smile genuine and warm. But soon, her noticing him turned into something more. A flutter in her stomach when she heard his car pull into the driveway. A silly, schoolgirl grin she'd quickly hide when he waved. She started timing her gardening sessions to his comings and goings, just for a brief, pleasant exchange. She even bought a new, brighter shade of lipstick. It was ridiculous, she told herself. He was a kid. She was a middle-aged woman with a mortgage and reading glasses. What was she even thinking? This internal battle raged on. One part of her was mortified, calling herself foolish. The other, a long-dormant part, felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. This crush, as absurd as it seemed, was making her feel alive again. She was paying more attention to her appearance, revisiting old hobbies, and even humming along to the pop music that bled through their shared wall. It was a secret, thrilling, and utterly confusing part of her day. The awkward encounters began to stack up. There was the time she was trying to get a frisbee off a roof and almost fell, only to be caught by a startled Tyler, who was heading out for a run. He held her steady for a moment longer than necessary, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs, and she mumbled a thank you before practically fleeing back inside, her face burning. Another time, she baked a lemon cake, his favorite she'd overheard him telling a friend, and brought a slice over. He was so genuinely thankful, praising her baking skills, that she found herself tongue-tied, unable to form a coherent sentence. She just smiled, nodded, and retreated, feeling both elated by his praise and embarrassed by her own awkwardness. Each interaction was a roller coaster of hope and humiliation. She was becoming a caricature of a lovelorn teenager. She'd rehearse conversations in her head that would never happen. She'd analyze every brief hello for a deeper meaning. The crush had taken over, and the initial thrill was starting to curdle into anxiety. She knew this couldn't go on. The fantasy was fun, but the reality was just making her feel silly and insecure. She needed to do something, not for him, but for her. She needed to reclaim her own story. One quiet Saturday afternoon, she saw Tyler in his yard, reading. Taking a deep breath, she walked over. No cake, no clumsy antics. Just her. "Tyler," she started, her voice surprisingly steady. "Can I talk to you for a second?" He looked up, a friendly smile on his face. "Of course, Mrs. Gable. Everything okay?" They sat on his porch steps, the air warm and still. "Please, call me Margaret," she said softly. "I feel like I need to be honest with you, and maybe with myself." She looked at her hands, then met his eyes. "Lately, I've developed feelings for you. More than just neighborly feelings." She let the words hang in the air, a huge weight lifting off her shoulders with their release. "I know it's inappropriate and strange, given our age difference, and I'm not expecting anything from you. I had to say it. I had to stop hiding." Tyler was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Margaret's heart pounded, bracing for laughter or disgust. But when he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, full of a maturity that belied his age. "Margaret," he said, testing her name. "Thank you for telling me. That must have taken a lot of courage." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm really flattered. Truly, you're a wonderful person. But I see you as a great neighbor and a friend. I don't share those same romantic feelings." The rejection was clear, unequivocal, and strangely, it didn't hurt. Instead, A profound sense of relief washed over Margaret. It was out. The secret was gone. There was no more guessing, no more fantasy. There was only the truth, delivered with kindness and respect. She smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Thank you, Taya. Thank you for being so kind about it." He smiled back. Of course. The conversation shifted to other things: his college plans, her garden, the terrible traffic on Main Street. It was normal, confortable. The tension was gone, replaced by a new, more authentic friendship. Walking back to her house, Margaret felt lighter. She had faced her fear, spoken her truth, and survived. The rejection wasn't a failure. It was a liberation. For weeks, her world had revolved around him, around a silly, impossible crush. But, in confessing it, and having it kindly turned down, she had taken back control. The experience had woken her up. It reminded her that she was still a woman capable of deep feeling, of passion, of taking risks. The crush wasn't about Tyler at all. It was about her. It was her heart reminding her that it was still beating, that it wanted more than just a predictable routine. In the following weeks, Margaret started making changes. She joined a hiking club, something she'd always wanted to do. She signed up for a pottery class, delighting in the feeling of creating something with her own hands. She reconnected with old friends, filling her evenings with laughter, and shared histories instead of waiting by the window. She and Tyler remained good neighbors. The hellos were still cheerful, but now they were laced with a comfortable, easy friendship. There was no more awkwardness, no more hidden longing. She saw him not as an object of affection, but as a kind young man who, in a strange way, had helped her find herself again. Margaret's world was no longer beige. It was bursting with color, not because of a boy next door, but because she had finally decided to pick up the paintbrush herself. She had rediscovered her own worth, her own desires, and her own power. She was no longer invisible. She was the main character, and her story was just getting started. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire. Have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like a ghost in your own life? That was Margaret at 53. With her kids grown and a divorce behind her, her days had settled into a quiet, predictable rhythm. Life felt beige. She'd look in the mirror and see a woman she barely recognized, someone whose spark had dimmed so gradually she hadn't even noticed it was gone. Her world was small, contained within the four walls of her house and the familiar aisles of the local grocery store. It wasn't a bad life, just a quiet one, a life waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then, one sunny afternoon, something did. A moving truck pulled up next door, and out stepped Tyler, 18, full of life, with a smile that could light up the entire street. He was all youthful energy and easy confidence, carrying boxers with a strength that seemed effortless. Margaret watched from her kitchen window, a strange flutter in her chest. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in decades, a jolt of electricity that made her feel suddenly, intensely alive. She told herself it was silly, just an appreciation for a handsome young man. But as the days turned into weeks, that silly feeling started to feel a lot like a crush. Her routine was shattered. Suddenly, her garden needed constant, meticulous attention, especially when Tyler was outside washing his car. She started baking again, hoping the scent of fresh cookies might waft over the fence. She'd find any excuse to be outside when he was. One time, she accidentally dropped her mail right as he was getting his concerned look on his face, and helped her pick it up. His fingers brushed against hers, and for a moment, the world stopped. Ehust smiled, said, "Have a good day, Margaret," and went back inside, leaving her with a racing heart and a blush she hadn't felt since high school. It was mortifying and thrilling all at once. These little encounters became the highlights of her week. She started paying more attention to her appearance. A little lipstick here, a new scarf there. Her friends noticed the change. "You're glowing," one of them said over coffee. Margaret just laughed it off, but she knew it was true. This secret crush, as impossible and absurd as it was, had breathed life back into her. She was noticing the world again, noticing herself again. It was as if she had been living in black and white, and Tyler had suddenly turned the color back on. She knew it was a fantasy, a daydream, but it was a beautiful one. The more she saw of him, the more she learned. He wasn't just a handsome face. She'd overhear him on the phone with his mom, his voice full of warmth and respect. She saw him patiently teaching the little girl across the street how to ride her bike. He was kind, gentle, and mature beyond his years. This only deepened her admiration, making the fantasy feel more real and the reality more complicated. This wasn't just a physical attraction anymore. She was drawn to his character, his spirit, and that made everything feel much more significant and much more dangerous. One evening, Margaret was sitting on her porch, lost in thought, when she saw Tyler heading out. He stopped when he saw her. "Hey, Margaret! Everything okay?" he asked, his voice soft. She managed a small smile. "Just enjoying the quiet," she replied. He hesitated, then walked over and sat on the steps near her. "It is a nice night," he said. And then they just talked. Not about the weather or dropped mail, but about real things. He talked about his dreams of being a musician, the pressures of starting college. She found herself opening up, too, talking about her old job, her travels, the person she used to be before life got so quiet. In that conversation, under the soft glow of the porch light, the age gap seemed to melt away. They were just two people connecting, sharing parts of their souls. He listened, really listened, with an empathy that touched her deeply. For the first time, she felt seen not as an older neighbor, not as a mother, but just as Margaret. The feeling was so powerful, so overwhelming, that before she could stop herself, the words tumbled out. "Tyler," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I have to be honest. I've developed feelings for you. It's confusing, and I know it's inappropriate, but it's the truth." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. The crickets chirped. A car drove by in the distance. Tyler looked at her, his expression unreadable at first. Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs, bracing for laughter, for disgust, for him to run away. But he didn't. He just held her gaze, and a look of incredible kindness filled his eyes. He took a slow breath. "Margaret," he said gently, I'm really flattered, and I think you're an amazing person. I love talking with you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I see you as a really wonderful friend, and a neighbor." It was a rejection, clear and simple, but it was the kindest, most respectful rejection she could have ever imagined. A wave of relief washed over her, so potent it almost made her dizzy. The tension that had been building for weeks finally broke. She hadn't been laughed at. She hadn't been dismissed. She had been heard, and she had been respected. A genuine smile spread across her face. "Thank you, Tyler," she said, and she meant it. "Thank you for being so kind." He smiled back, a warm, genuine smile. "Of course," he said. They sat in comfortable silence for a few more minutes before he said good night and left. Margaret stayed on the porch, watching the stars come out. The crush was over. The fantasy had evaporated, but something real and far more valuable was left in its place. In confessing her feelings, she hadn't found a young lover. She had found herself. She had rediscovered the brave, vibrant woman who wasn't afraid to take a risk, to be vulnerable, to feel deeply. The next morning, Margaret looked in the mirror and saw a different person. The spark was back in her eyes, not because of a boy next door, but because of her own courage. The world felt full of color again, not because Tyler was in it, but because she was fully in it. Her life was her own again, full of possibility, and she couldn't wait to see what would happen next. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe.